This video is going to be another painting walkthrough. I'm going to walk through some of the steps of putting together this piece that I have on screen, which is another video game inspired painting. This time I'm kind of going full circle and doing another one based on The Secret of Mana, which is a 90s RPG. So I start this how I always start paintings. I go freehand, just trying to rough out and approximate angles and shapes of like kind of the subject's outlines. I use a thinned down kind of middle color like value and hue, thinned down a little bit with linseed oil just to get the outline, really focusing on angles, trying to get positioning right. So once I'm done with that basic outline, then I start blocking things in. One of the challenges that I've had lately with some of these video game inspired paintings is that I've wanted the full view of the figure, to try to get more of the scene in and more of the recognizable features of like sort of what these characters look like and what their kind of clothing looks like. But to do that, I've lost some of because I use 12-inch by 12-inch paper, I've lost some of the space that I need to include facial feature details. So one of my intents with this piece, as I continue to block in sort of like color shapes throughout the face and throughout the clothing, one of my intents here was to zoom in a little more. I wanted more facial feature details. So not going all the way down to the feet with a full figure pose, which is nice and good. It's nice practice to do that, but this one wanted to zoom in more. So what you're seeing on screen right about now is just continuing that blocking in. Oftentimes when I block in, just to mention this, I start with the darker colors or darker color values, really leaning on raw umber a lot and ultramarine blue to try to bring out those dark colors. I don't always do that though, to be honest. I wish I could say I had a really consistent pattern or really consistent approach, but it's not always the same. Sometimes I'll go more towards trying to do sort of those middles again. Like that rough outline is a very middle brownish kind of color that's, as I said, thinned down. That's the only time I thin down the paint in any paintings though, is right at the beginning. Throughout the rest of the piece, it's just straight up oil paint from the tube. I don't use any like turpentine or anything like that. Sometimes I do go kind of middle with things similar to that outline. Again, just oil paint from the tube though. So, and really the process is, like I know oil painting from first, like when you're looking at it, especially if you haven't done it before, it's kind of intimidating because it is like, there's a lot of practice to get things, to get used to how the paint behaves and how it mixes. But when you really boil it down, like the process, I feel like for alla prima painting, the wet on wet painting is not super complicated in a way, if you look at it this way. So like just blocking in shapes, and you start with big shapes and you work to little shapes, and you just keep doing that with everything. Like you do that with the subject's face, start with the big shapes, do that with their clothing, like where are the big shadows, like the blocks of color don't just correspond to different color hues, it corresponds to like, here's a block of shadow, here's a block of bright light, and you just do that. You do that on their clothes. Now you can see in this painting, the blocking in is progressed to the sky and to the water. To me, it's the same thing. Like you're just finding those zones of color and you're splotching them in there. What I'm doing right now is the sky. Like this brush that I'm using is a very much a frayed brush that I have a few now that I've really worn down, and I use those largely for backgrounds where I don't really need precision, but it's actually to my advantage to kind of splotch it in and have it have the color just kind of go in lots of directions. I don't know if you can really see because I have sped up this time lapse to try to fit it into about 10 to 12 minutes. We'll see where this lands, but Like you might not be able to see the brush exactly, but like that's what I'm doing for the background. When I was working on when I flip to, like here I'm in the hair, and when I flip to the subjects, the brushes that I use are usually the newer brushes, because the bristles haven't kind of frayed or split. They're in much better shape. They're kind of, there's more structure to them, so I can get a little more precision. But much like a lot of the more experienced painters that I enjoy, like watching their videos and seeing their art in process, I try to emulate that, and I try to go, like I've always heard, bigger brushes for as long as you possibly can, and only switch to the more precise smaller ones later on. I try to do that too, because I find that helps. It helps me keep with that mentality of the blocking, right? So just as I progress in this painting, that's just what I continue to do, is just to block things in. So I want to talk a little too about this painting specifically. So I mentioned Secret of Mana as, one of those classic games from the 90s that I loved. It's actually, has turned into a big video game series. I think I've done 11 or 12 of them, of paintings now, of these classic games. And I started with a Secret of Mana painting, and it wasn't super great. I was trying to figure out how to blend or bring together like sort of a cartoonish video game sprite style with my own style that over the last several hundred paintings is kind of taken on its own, like this is kind of how it looks when I paint people. I tried to bring those things together with that first Secret of Mana painting. It was an okay painting, but I don't know that I was super successful at converting. This one I actually like better. I think I was able to adapt more of like kind of the way I like to style people or want to style people with those characters, perhaps. I took some really significant liberties with the designs. Like if you are familiar with the game or you like the game, I certainly kind of veered off on my own. I hope they're still kind of recognizable, but I know that I maybe took too many liberties with veering off from the way that they look. So hopefully it's a good cap off. I'll probably keep doing the video game paintings, to be honest, but just thinking of things, closing a loop. If I were to close this loop and veer off in a different direction, this would be kind of a cool way to do it, like doing a similar painting again, this time taking lessons learned and kind of incorporating those. So another thing that I want to talk about, I think I'm getting pretty close to the end here, as I can tell, like in this time lapse, I don't have a whole lot of blank space left. I'm kind of refining and touching up where I can, adding little light highlights, like highlights of where the light touches. I mentioned before a couple things. I love natural poses, and it's something that I've really been working on and practicing, like to make humans and kind of positioned in a way that makes sense and is normal. It's not something that I've always been great at, but when I do successfully put people kind of like in a way that looks normal, it makes me feel good as an artist, as an amateur artist, but an artist. It makes me feel like I've accomplished something and done something right and good when I'm able to do that. Again, I'm not always able to, but here I kind of almost sort of got there. Like, I feel like the stances and poses were they felt right at first, but as I started examining this later, I actually had to return to the painting the next day, and you'll see I'm correcting an arm here too. Kind of the angle was wrong and very unnatural. When I was looking at this later, I realized that the male character, I really did not do the angles and proportions. His arm lengths are wild. Looks kind of like an orangutan. The female character, a little more natural, but still maybe a little too long-limbed. That's the price of not really measuring or using a proportional divider or any tools. If you just freehand stuff, sometimes you make mistakes. That's pretty normal, and I try to paint fast, so that causes more mistakes sometimes. So this is kind of a mixed bag. Is it a win in terms of those natural stances and poses? Sort of. Kind of. I kind of got there. Another thing that I wanted to mention is my tendency to overwork painting sometimes. I think that's a common refrain from artists, though. Like, I've even seen memes about it, like, oh, well, I just can't leave this painting alone, and now I messed this up, or whatever. That I'm very guilty of it. Here, I did that as well. There was a point where after I fixed the female character's arm, I think I should have stopped there instead of continuing to work at it, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I just felt the urge to dive back into it and try to touch some things up, and I feel like I made some aspects worse. Maybe. I don't know. At this point in the painting, though, I really am not sure. I've lost all objectivity. Another thing, I keep circling back to other things. Another thing, I think this is the best video recording quality that I've gotten in quite a long time, which is nice. I've had a lot of struggles with my, I record these with an iPhone, and I've had some maybe lighting issues or maybe camera issues. I'm not really sure, but some of my videos just haven't looked as good as I wanted. So I feel like this one was pretty solid, though. Like, the video quality is decent, so I feel happy about that. So anyways, that kind of wraps this one up. We're at the end of the painting. Yeah, I really like this one. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm pretty happy with the end result overall. So that's all I have for this. So thank you for watching this. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope to see you for the next one.